What is up, Waffle Gang? I do hope you are well. My name is Mark, and today we're checking out some nightmare neighbors, neighbors from hell, whatever you want to call it. If you are new here, please consider hitting that like, that subscribe, and maybe that notification bell too, as it really helps out our channel. And let's just dive straight in to today's stories. Now, today's stories will come from a different selection of subreddits and things like that, because we're just trying to find bad neighbors in general. And this story comes from Hair's Spiders. Meddling neighbor cuts down our trees because he hates them. We have neighbors on one side whose house is pretty close to ours, an older couple. We haven't talked to them much and I thought they were nice enough at first. But the husband has proven himself to be kind of a prick. I get why the previous owners planted arborvitae between the two properties. The biggest bone of contention for him is a huge blue spruce tree that is on our property but shades the side of his house, along with some tangly growth besides it, which is also on our property. That tangly growth also serves as a privacy screen during the summer, as it blocks the headlights of vehicles coming down the hill from shining straight into our first floor bedroom window. I liked having it there as it was green. There were a few other young trees along the edge of our property that offered shade and green and were generally nice to look at, in my opinion. Our neighbour is one of those retirees that is obsessed with his lawn, while we've got two kids and not a lot of time, so we like to keep things on our side from getting out of control, but nothing is manicured like he's got going on. So, a few years ago, the two maple trees in our front yard are getting unruly, and some branches have started touching our roof. I called a tree guy to come by and trim them back on the house side as well as the sidewalk, as they were extending over that as well. No part of either tree extending to our neighbour's property. I was specific that I still wanted to keep as much of the trees as possible, since the foliage shaded the house nicely during the hot weather. I was at work the day the tree guy showed up to trim the trees, as we agreed upon, and when I arrived home that afternoon I was shocked to find a whole lot of open space where green used to be, and spied our neighbour watching me from the window as I took it all in. As it turned out, meddling neighbour had used the same guy in the past and called him over from where he was working in our yard. He slipped him a few $100 to bush hog all the growth between our properties, even though none of it was touching his property and clearly on our side of his low stone wall, which effectively took out more than a 2-story high young tree that shaded my son's room upstairs and all the foliage screen from our bedroom. He'd also cut the maple tree facing his property way back on the sides, something I had specifically asked him not to do. The weirdest thing was, a young tree on the property line had all of its branches lopped off and were left with what was essentially a 5-inch diameter, 15-foot high stump sticking out of the ground with nothing on top. Why it wasn't completely removed, I have no idea. I was pretty pissed off that neighbour had meddled in the first place, but even more so that the tree guy had done this without asking me first. Our neighbour had also asked tree guy to ask me if he'd be willing to go halvesies to take down the blue spruce as it was shading his side yard. A section about 2 feet wide and 15 feet long, as his grass wasn't growing as nicely as he wanted. I had a few choice words for the tree guy, and then as petty revenge, we not only didn't take down the blue spruce, but we got 3 sections of ugly unfinished privacy fence and installed them about 2 feet back from the stone wall where the tangly growth had been. While my husband and a friend were setting the posts, the neighbour wandered over and said to him, "Your wife's mad, isn't she?" And my husband replied, "Well, you made her cry, so I'd say so." The best part of it is that the tangle has grown back and it only grows on the neighbour side of the fence, so we don't see it, but he does. Rather than come over and ask us to take care of it, and many other things he underhandedly tried to achieve, we would have done had he spoken to us in person. I caught him skulking around the gap, cutting stuff down last summer. I look forward to seeing him do it every year. I may even plant some raspberry brambles in there for fun. The giant stump has gone gangbusters and grown back with more than twice the foliage it had to begin with. I refer to it as the "fuck you Dennis tree." ETA for your amusement, here's "fuck you Dennis," and unfortunately the image is no longer there because I would have loved to have seen it. And there was a few comments of the ways of getting petty revenge that's like "wish I could read" said, "should have taken that tree dude to small claims court and gotten the cost of some new trees and maybe a big ass fence installed." And Ethan says, "Plant some bamboo on the edge of your property and watch the runners overtake his yard, and yours. Probably still worth doing though. Put a walnut, sweet gum, or crabapple tree on the property line, and it will drop all their useless fruit into his yard." And Obsidian says, "I think if I was in your position, I'd be very tempted to plant some poison ivy in with a tangly growth." And we'll have one more from Kurenai saying, I love your story. If you want a cheap extra revenge that will consume yours and his yard, plant bamboo. That stuff takes off and will easily provide you the privacy you want and will constantly be growing and spreading. Just a warning, it's a real pain to remove if you don't like it. There was something that was taken over in the UK a couple of years back. I imagine, people still have issues with this. Is it knotweed or something, like Japanese knotweed or something? And apparently that's a real pain to get out your yard and just kills everything. I'm not sure though. I'm no gardener myself. But wow, yes, I enjoyed that one. And we move on to another Nightmare Neighbor. And our next story was an Am I the Arsehole post, but it does involve a nightmare neighbor as well. And it's from Ollie Clark, who says, Am I the arsehole for installing solar panels that reflect into a neighbor's house? There's a fairly long backstory here, but it's relevant to the post, so bear with me. Our neighbours over the back bought their house a few years ago and proceeded to almost completely demolish it and rebuild it much larger. We were fine with that. There was a lot of noise and dust for a couple of months, but it was only temporary. As part of the rebuild, they installed solar panels on the roof, high-level security floodlights, and lots of windows. This is relevant later. This was all fine except for one of the security lights shone right into our house. Next time I saw them, I asked them if they could angle it down a bit so it wasn't shining into our house. They moved it a bit, but it still shines in. We got used to it. The solar panels and windows also reflect the sun into our house from time to time. That's to be expected if you live near other people. Houses have reflective surfaces on them. Then they asked if they could remove our hedge and plant a new one on their land. I agreed because, to be fair, our hedge was a bit old and badly maintained, so there was no boundary between our garden and theirs. Fine, but their dog kept coming into our garden and leaving little presents, and their kids kept knocking balls in and trampling our flower beds to get them. I mentioned this to them, they apologised, but nothing really changed. I didn't bother mentioning it again. They then asked if they could trim one of our trees that was overhanging their garden. I agreed and offered to do it for them, but his brother is a tree surgeon, so they said they wanted to do it. Fine. We were out when the brother came round, and when we got home to find he'd removed 3 of our trees in our garden. I was annoyed but didn't say anything in the interest of neighbourly relations. They were self-seeded trees anyway, not as if we bought and planted them. Then nothing else happened for a while. This year we decided to have an extension built on our house and took the opportunity to have solar panels fitted onto our roof as well. They were installed a few days ago, and whilst they were still being installed, the woman from the back came round to complain to the builders that the solar panels were causing glare into their house. I was pretty gobsmacked. They were complaining about something that they had installed years before us, not to mention the security light that ensures that we don't just get glare during the day but through the night as well. I've just ignored it and haven't been round to see them. Now, I read into some of OP's comments and things like that, and he's from the UK, so I'm not sure what the law is behind, tree law in the UK. I know it's a massive thing in the US. You read the US stories and there's like people suing each other. And I imagine you can do that in the UK as well. People cutting your trees down, even if they're self-seeded or not, they come onto your land and cut down your property. So yes, so you're definitely not the arsehole in the situation. And, I'm concerned that your neighbors are walking over you so badly here. I mean, they're dogs and kids trampling over your flower beds, your dog taking a turd on your grass. I mean, come on, man. And then they totally disrespecting you by not really listening to you about the floodlights and, the glare into your house as well. And then has the cheek to come round and complain to you. No, I think they need a little taste of their own medicine. I'm going to say not the arsehole in this one, even though we're covering Nightmare Neighbours. But we'll cover some comments anyway, with Charlie Blackwater, who says, not the arsehole. Time for you to start saying no. Get yourself a 6-foot privacy fence and start standing up for yourself. And Gin Trouble says, not the arsehole, but please stop being such a doormat for your neighbours. It's not good neighbourly relations. They're running over you like a Mack truck and you apologise for being in the way. The more leeway you give them, the more they will take. And Female Is says, not the arsehole. They can buy blinds. I would also recommend a good fence around your property so they don't use squatters' right to annex part of your yard. And Murder says, not the arsehole, and look up tree law. Them cutting down your trees could have resulted in an expensive fine for them. You can point this out and remind them that you have been reasonable. Remind them that they need to replant the hedge. And Rivka says, not the arsehole, but you need to stop agreeing to the things they ask to do. And we'll have one more from I'm Hiding saying, not the asshole, but, in quotes, they moved it a bit but it still shines in, we got used to it. Then again saying, I mentioned this to them, they apologised but nothing really changed. I didn't bother mentioning it again. And quotes one more time saying, I was annoyed but didn't say anything in the interest of neighbourly relations. And then just says, you're letting them walk all over you, man. Now, what are your thoughts on this one? What would you do if you was in this scenario? Let me know in the comments below and we'll move on to another story. And our next story comes from Beatralicious. I think my neighbour belongs here. So my SO and I moved into a house where it and the neighbours were both up for sale, not realising that they both hated each other and this was a factor in both being up. When I moved in, the neighbour, I call her Karen, next door was friendly, even offered to help us clean our house, which we politely declined. We put up cameras immediately as there was some crime in the area and we had them before as our places had been broken into previously to moving into this property. Karen didn't like that. It caught her dog as she let it out daily to defecate on our lawn twice a day. She wouldn't let it go out. She would go back inside her house and call her dog in a few minutes later. I initially picked up the dog waste but quickly got annoyed. Their dog would also pee on the lawn and create giant burn patches which would cause other neighbours to complain, including Karen. So I went to talk to them. I was polite, but they thought it was crazy anyone would have an issue with this, and as an excuse, offered that they'd never seen it happen. Yeah, because you purposely go back inside to not see your dog pooping. It kept happening. So one day I returned their property. They weren't happy, but after this they watched their dog and picked it up after it went on my property, but left it otherwise. My grass also grew back after I reseeded and didn't have any further burn marks. Turned out it was Karen's dog doing that too. They often leave the dog off the leash and it causes all kinds of trouble, but mainly with others. It chases cyclists and nearly causes crashes with them and vehicles when it runs into traffic. It often lunges at other people's dogs and sometimes creates problems as they try and control their dog while one chases them. It will bark all day at nothing and everything. They can be right beside it on the deck and they are perfectly happy listening to it bark. Fine. Except then their daughter and her friend started throwing rocks at our house and windows. Big rocks. Caught on cam. I went over again, spoke to the dad. Call him David. He said he would take care of it, and shortly after their daughter came by and apologised with a smirk on her face. Then, out of an abundance of pettiness, they moved in more family and had them always parking their cars in front of our house, leaving the spot in front of theirs open. Always. This displaced our guests, but we did nothing. What could we do? Their actions were rude, but legal. This continued for a month until my SO suggested that maybe I was cynical and it wasn't being done on purpose to be disrespectful. She then put a note saying something to the effect of, if you could park when possible in front of your own address instead of ours, it would be greatly appreciated as it displaces our guests. This went over about as well as you can imagine. Karen immediately upon hearing about the note parked her normally garage kept car in front of her driveway and half in front of our grass to ensure our guests were still displaced, but to make a point, and also just to show extreme childish levels of maturity. When my SO left the house to check the mail, Karen, who had her car parked for hours with her and her daughter taking turns to watch for either of us, made a beeline for my SO and aggressively and vaguely threatened her by saying we would be neighbours for a long time and asking her repeatedly with chest puffed out, "So, this is how it's gonna be." She also made sure we knew that she had called the city and they told her that we didn't own the street. Yep, no kidding, Karen. Not at all what the note said. The next day, our guests parked in front of our house. Karen went to their car and started to film them up close and became aggressive. These people were confused as to why someone was being so confrontational. If Karen and her kin can't park there, nobody can. We later got a call about this and confirmed it on our house cameras. The police called and attended. Karen pretended she wasn't home. The police left, and seeing a chance, so did Karen. The police returned later, spoke to someone at the house and left a message for Karen to call them. Today, Karen approached my SO and me with a note to tell us that she didn't want our guests throwing their vegan food in her garbage anymore. That's great, except this never happened. After checking the cameras, I let Karen know. She became angry and started taking pictures of the property, us, and who knows what else. Now there is only to wait and see what tomorrow brings us. This is one of those stories, and I just think, There are people out there that's sad in life, that they just try to pick fights with absolutely everything. I mean, where did it go from being nice and polite, how offering to clean the house? Maybe she was just trying to get in the house to have a nose around, possibly. But that's a very cynical view from me there, but it just feels like that a little bit after reading the rest of the story. But yeah, for her to go from that to then being absolutely a repulsive neighbor, it must just be a very, very sad existence to live like that, mustn't it? I mean, come on now. Has any of you got a similar neighbor to this? Let me know in the comments below, and we'll see if we can find any more spicy neighbors. This next story is from Beneficial Neat 202. Psycho older woman thinks I'm after her husband. I need input please. I'm a single 32-year-old female, bought my house in September 2020. Fully fenced, but it's chain link on my neighbours. They are late 60s side. She thinks I'm after her husband because I've spoken to him 3 times. Even told me I'm disrespectful for talking to him about mulching the property line and apologising for my dog's barking. She has been stalking us, waiting for us to go outside, and then she goes in her back porch and cusses, threatening my dogs. This lady used to baby talk to my dogs, and now she threatened to shoot my dog on 6/16. Then she waited for me to go outside at 5 AM to walk my dog, and she threatened to shoot me if I ever walked onto her property or walking by it. 6/18. She threatened to kill, so I had to call the cops, who agreed she is nuts, thinks everyone wants her husband, lied to the cops and said she feels threatened for her life, and then basically told me I should call them anytime she does something like that again and to put up security cameras. That evening, I came home to a cardboard sign on the tree facing my house that says, "Private property, keep off, this is from her husband." Lol. Then she called the cops on 6/20, reporting my dogs are running at large and she feared for her life. They are always either leashed or in the backyard. Oh, those cameras I order, the fucking irony. They were delivered today, but the Amazon person delivered it to their house and she won't give me my package to me. What the fuck? I put a letter in her mailbox asking she give it back, so tomorrow I may have to call the cops to go over and ask for it. This is insane, y'all. Why on earth would I be after her old fat husband? Ugh. Edited 6/25. I know I need to call the cops. I know if I don't, it's like letting her win and she will continue to be rude and ridiculous. The fact that I have to resort to calling the cops makes this so upsetting for me. When I called the other day, I offered them muffins and coffee because I felt so ridiculous calling about my neighbours. Damn, I don't get it though. When there's someone like threatening to shoot others and the cops already know about it, can't they take away the weapons or anything like that? That's what I never kind of understand these ones. That's a threat to life. Surely there's more that's got to be done. Wow. And this next story is from International Sky 800. Husband tried to talk to the new neighbour again. Our new neighbour moved in last October. We had been friendly with the previous owner. He'd always been kind and looked out for my son and me. He didn't have time for a pet and loved to spoil our 2 German shepherds and would like to talk to our cats when he'd see them in the windows. When my husband moved in, they became friends as well. When he was selling, we worked with a realtor to let the prospective buyers know we had 2 large dogs and even let them out in our backyard so they could meet them. So when the new neighbour's parents bought the house for him to live in, we assumed there wouldn't be a problem. We were wrong. He's been so unpleasant, threatening my husband and our dogs, pointing cameras at our house and backyard, staring at me in my home office from his porch, removing feeding dishes from our property. We have a county certification to manage a feral cat colony. Installing spotlights pointed at our bedroom that are so bright they may be interfering with the approach path to O'Hare Airport, and calling animal control about all things he believes we are doing illegally. When animal control explained that we're completely within our rights and the feral cat colony work is actually something she encouraged us to do, he still insisted that she file a report. We decided that day to install our own cameras and to install the tallest fence we could as soon as the ground thawed in the spring. For the most part, we just ignore him. I see no point in engaging with him. My husband, though, thought he could find some common ground and tried again this week. He told the troll that we don't have to be best friends, but our houses are 10 feet apart, so we should all try to be pleasant. He even offered to help him trim his tree in the backyard. Troll's response was that he didn't move 3,000 miles to ask for help. He went on about how he has a lawyer ready to sue us over the illegal stuff we're doing. like having a heated cat shelter on our property, behind bushes and retaining a wall, but he's too poor right now to do it. He also mentioned that his house is too much work and we're making his life too hard. Our village told him to stop digging out a parking pad next to his garage without a permit when they did the inspection on our new fence, but this is our fault somehow. So he's probably going to sell in 3 years. I guess we're going to continue to ignore him until June of 2024. I think my husband is done trying at this point. The neighbours on the other side of him have decided to move after 30 years because they just want to retire in peace. The rest of the neighbours are just perplexed that someone can come into a community and expect everyone else to bend to him. It's just a shame. You can see why his parents shipped him off then, right? It's like the other story I was talking about. I don't understand how people can have this attitude. You move into a place and you get some lovely neighbours like OP here, who's already warned them about their dogs and said they're willing to let their dogs come out and meet them. If I had neighbours like that who said, "You want to come around and meet my dogs?" I'd be like, "Hell yeah, I'm coming round." And then they're offering to help with like maintenance on the house and all this kind of stuff. I just sound like absolutely lovely neighbours. I would love that community. And then this person who just taints it all. It's absolutely disgusting. Oh dear, it is a shame. Like OP said at the very end there, it is a massive shame. But what do you guys think of this collection of neighbour stories? I was going to share one of my own, but I'm going to save it for a live stream, which we got coming back very, very soon when I finish my other work job next Wednesday. I think we're going to be continuing with the live streams every Friday from then on, and we'll see how that goes. But if you do have a moment of your time, let me know what you thought on today's stories and let me know what you're up to today. As I always say, I love to hear what you're up to whilst you're listening. Thank you so much for your love, support and time, and I will see you cheeky so-and-so, in the next one. Take care, guys. Much love.
I got food up in the fridge. Y'all keep looking for that new wave. I think I like it how it is.